know, it's like the next
Well, let's wait for next week to decide whether it's going to happen and how it's going to happen and all that. So we were sharing anything that we had doubts about or that we were particularly excited about from the last two sessions.
Well, as I said last week, I'm still from Missouri.
So we're going to show you tonight.
I'm all eyes and ears, and
Okay.
not without opinions along the way, of course. But I'd like to think I would like to think that it works because our community has been starved of cash, and there was a great song composed 20, 30 years ago. It's not the economy, it's not the people that've gone lazy, it's the economy that's gone crazy. The title of it was First Dollar on the Wall. You know, a custom of a business putting their first dollar in a frame on the wall. And I think that's really important. But gee, it's been rough. It's been rough.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
We'll see
everything
what we
those
can
guys
do.
said, and it goes farther back. It goes back before Christ threw the money changers out of the temple. You know, ever since and before that, society's been struggling about what the role of the bankers should be and how lending should work. You know, and we've lost recently. But what if? It's a long view.
Well, it is a long view. I mean,
It's been
that's
actually been
important
back
to
and forth
notice.
in different societies too.
Yeah.
But I mean, you know, Jackson was right there.
Yeah.
And so I'm just talking about recently, you know, after that. But really, even worse in the last, 10 years. And so I'm wondering if this actually worked, what would be the response of the bankers who control the legislative system? And what's there? I've been meaning to get online and look up the Vermont's banking laws, which I'm somewhat familiar with, and see if there's anything in there, defining. I mean, all you have to do is get defined as a lending institution.
A deposit taking.
Deposit taking, and then you're under this, banking, insurance, security. I'll try to do that for next week.
Kara.
Kara.
I don't have any particular excitements or dismays. I'm just learning.
Good, thank you.
Well, we got a chance to listen to a interview of Sibel Edmonds, who is a whistleblower around 9/11, and she had a poignant insight about the people who are getting elected. And she said that the people who are making it to chairmanships and top positions down in D.C. have a direct correlation to the size of their FBI dossier. So the only ones that are getting anywhere are the ones that and she calls it the deep state, what she calls the people way more pulling the strings than even the executive branch or anybody. It's called the deep state. And she said, she mentioned Leahy, she mentioned all these people that they control them by blackmail. So the people who are good are made non-viable candidates by the press.
Because they don't have anything on them.
You don't have anything on them. So I see it as very simple, that we just we need to just continue to educate, and I think we can really put a question of integrity to our legislature, because I think there's a widespread understanding now that money is an accounting system ever since Occupy. There's pretty much a basic understanding you're not going to get anything, any commodity, you're not gonna get anything back if you trade it, it's just a accounting system, and I think you need to really say, how come you don't have the integrity to make the accounting system give everybody $21 an hour for their work, since it could be done. That's all I have to think about.
Thank you.
Well, I've been with rCredits for a while now, and I remember when I started, I didn't really have a full understanding of it, but it's taken a while. It's sort of been like an evolution. I feel I understand it pretty well now. There's probably parts of it that I would have questions about. But I think that we really have to try something new, and because the system that we're using does not work for us, and money should work for us. We shouldn't kind of like contort ourselves to work for it. rCredits makes perfect sense to me. I like the way it's set up. I like the fact that it's online, that you can see all the supply and demand. It's not so much of the demand, but the supply, and it's very open, and the community can decide what they want to invest in. And I love the fact that it's like nodes everywhere, and that to me is the strength of rCredits, because you can't chop off a head anywhere. It's just all tentacles everywhere. So I think rCredits is something I've put a lot of my investment in, and I hope it starts up, and people get to know about money. They learn about money, because a lot of people don't really know much about money. Really.
Thank you. Jesse?
Well, I like what Emmy says, because like anybody who has to build something from the ground up, they know they're in it for the long haul. They got to do some work, and they may spend the entirety of the beginning of the process alone. I think the room needs to be educated, because everybody's looking back instead of looking forward. They don't know enough about where we're going, so it's good that we're going to get on with it. But to develop something, you have to look forward, and I guess even be willing to fight for it. Town meeting day, once again here in Brattleboro, demonstrated that there's precious little incentive at all to do anything innovative. And I'm afraid I don't know how far back in our history that goes, but I think we just need to overcome it by being the thing instead of being against what's out there. I don't give a hoot anymore about what's out there. But I sure like to innovate something. And it ain't easy. But if we don't spend our time working and moving,
We'll get mowed over.
you're scrubbing the deck with a toothbrush. And you need all hands on deck. And like I said, we're going to have a lot of meetings to get more people involved. So we have to be the spokespeople for this.
Mm-hmm.
And it ought to be exciting. I'm excited.
I guess I have one concern. I don't know, and I tried to explain to a friend what this is all about, and I could not.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the concern I have, that coming out of this, even with 4 weeks, 4 different occasions that we meet, that I'm not sure I'm going to be able to explain it to somebody.
I haven't started that yet.
So, I mean, because of the amount of educating that you need to do to get people up to speed. I mean, everybody knows that the economic system, the money system is flawed. Most people know that. But to explain this jump, I mean, first we all need to know it backwards and forwards, and then we have to figure out how to make it easy for people to understand. And so I'm just a little concerned that is going to be a tough road. Otherwise, I'm excited.
Yep.
It's hard to
I
explain the
totally
money
know
system,
what
though.
you're talking about.
Yeah.
But we'll solve that problem. Because we don't expect everybody to understand. I want a core group that understands. I mean, from my point of view. After that, how much people understand will be up to them and their initiative. Would you like 10% extra? Do you think we should keep the economy local? It's real simple.
But then again,
Anyway.
people can't explain the monetary system that
Let's
we've got.
finish.
So
True, but they,
Why
a
do
lot
we
of people
need to?
can't even do that. So
Well, I
and we
think
use
that
it all
the
the time.
economic system
Yeah, that's what.
under which we live is a myth.
Hmm.
We're led to believe it works a certain way, and it doesn't. And that's by design. It works. You mentioned that it was flawed. I don't think it's flawed at all.
let's be diplomatic.
I think that that for the people who designed the system, it's working fine. But as far as what we're, I guess, induced to believe about it, it's flawed. It doesn't work the way they want us to think it works. Now, one of the things that I think is almost axiomatic about the system is there is no alternative. Well, I think there is no alternative. I think there are many alternatives. This is one of them. And if this is a chink in the armor to give some credibility to an alternative to the system that we all accept, it would be very beneficial for all except the very few at the top.
Okay, very good. So I'm happy with everybody's responses. That was very good. So I'm going to remind you that the sovereign issues the currency, and the entire idea behind the American experiment, democracy altogether, because we really were the first place. I mean, you go back to Greece and to Rome, and then there isn't really democracy until we're trying it in the United States or in America. There's a lot of thought about it. And so that ideal of, of by and for the people, government of by and for the people, that actually lives in people. There's a real sense that it ought to be that way. And that's the thing that we need to link to. That feeling that it really could be that way. And if we're to be sovereign, if the individual member of society is to be sovereign, right, then you have to be able to issue the money. Because if you're borrowing the money from the bankers and you can only get the money from the bankers for what the bankers are willing to fund, right, then you're not sovereign at all. So the really important thing is to understand that piece, at least for this group, to really understand that piece. We are going to have the issuing power. And it does have to ramp up and all the rest of it, and we do have to get to a certain mass, a certain scale. But everything in rCredits is designed to let us do that, and I want to demonstrate that. So, if you look at the rCredit, and it's all based on, this is really, really important because it addresses all the issues about the legality. This is based on an agreement that we make with each other. And we think that the agreement is something that everybody, just about everybody in the country can make. So, if you look at the rCredits application, it's not particularly different from signing up for a bank account at the bank. You have to give us all the same stuff. Do you need a copy?
I think I do. I thought I had.
Yeah. Let me give it
Is this a set, Stuart?
Yes.
Yeah, that's it. There you go. And the reason, well, we have a lot of reporting requirements. Because we're a mutual credit system and there's billions and billions of dollars being done in mutual credit systems across the country and across the world. So there's nothing unique about rCredits from the point of view of the IRS and the sort of compliance that we have to do. And the agreements, the business-to-business barter systems, and they really are doing billions of dollars of business a year. So the IRS is on top of all of that. They tell us exactly what we have to do, and we have it all automated in software. And when you go to, I'll show you this later, you go to the member website, you find where your 99B, 990B is. And then you can see what we're reporting to the IRS. We also need your bank account because in order for, which is on here, right, on the application. So we need your name, and we need your phone number, and your email, and your physical address, and your mailing address, and your social security number, and your date of birth. And you have to pick a PIN, and you can do all this online. You don't have to do it on paper and hand it in. I mean, you can just do it online when you get the invitation, which you'll all get before next session. You choose a PIN, you tell us how many months at that address, which is part of the whole idea of how reliable are you kind of thing. Whether you rent or own, the kinds of things that banks ask, your bank routing number, your bank account number, and then we get into the rCredits system itself, the minimum balance that you want to have in your rCredits account, so that it'll automatically, when your account gets down, when your rCredits account gets down to 50 rCredits, it'll move 50 rCredits out of your bank account, if that's what you tell it to do. So I always want 5 rCredits in my account. I always want 25 rCredits in my account. I always want 500 rCredits in my account. So it'll move it from your bank account when you've spent it down. And the point of that kind of thing is to make the system absolutely convenient and easy and, you know, what you'd rather do. Because if you're going to get an extra 10% and the business that you like and you're supporting and is supporting us is going to get an extra 10%, and we're all going to participate in distributing the money that we're not spending with all that conversion, right? There's a lot of incentive to do this. I mean, it's like, it's a no-brainer from a certain point of view, especially if you don't have to explain to them anything about money creation or banking or any of it. You want to support a local economy? Can we create a common good community where we get to decide, you know, how things should be? So that's the, that's the point. Then the application asks for a donation so that we can, so the Common Good Finance can continue. And that donation can be paid in rCredits or it can be paid in dollars, but on the application you're just going to, you can sit here. On the application it assumes that it's going to be paid with rCredits. And then what percentage of the rewards that you get, the incentives that you get, the 10% and the sign-up bonus or whatever, are you going to share with Common Good Finance or with the rCredit system so that we can keep it funded? So everything in the
Repeat that line.
setup.
Repeat that point, please.
Okay, every time you can't share more than 50% because we don't want to take away of the incentives. So we don't want to take away the incentive, but how much between nothing and 50% of your 10% and your sign-up bonus and those kinds of things are you willing to share with the system so that it's funded and can keep going and expanding and growing and, you know, maybe eventually hire some people to, do the work. Become the barter coaches or the, what in the barter
Can't we
industry
just raise
is
money
called
for that?
barter coach. What?
Can't we just raise money for that?
Yeah, we can, but it's built in. The whole point is that once you've got it and you signed up, everything just happens.
It's a very brilliant system
Yes.
because, you know, we can't, we're having a real hard time convincing people to leave this US dollar behind, to leap to a whole new thing. And this allows the bridge, which is the threshold to get there so that people can experience making more money come into being. But, you know, it's has to be this special system that bridges both in order to bring that visceral understanding to more people.
Right, and the understanding needs to be there behind it. I mean, what you'll see, if you when you reflect on it, and we've been through the whole thing, you'll see we actually understand money. there's an insight there that's been implemented, which is quite amazing. So, what percentage of your ongoing purchase rewards would you also like to donate to support the rCredit system? And then you choose 2 proxies, and if you don't participate for some reason, you're in Paris when the vote happens, or Ecuador, or wherever it is, or you totally forgot, or your computer's broken, or whatever, then your proxy's vote will count for you. And that gives us 100% participation. And you can change your proxy at any time. It makes it much, much more difficult to, fudge the vote. Do it at a time and in a way when most people aren't going to participate, right? Because then their proxies participate. And hopefully there will be people who are paying attention the whole time who are the proxies for a lot of people. We also get to look at who are the proxies for the most people. And they are by definition, not by election, not by campaigning, not by anything. They are, by definition, by the way they were chosen, they're trusted people. And we can ask them to take on particular responsibilities for the development of the system. You see that? I mean, it's just, and when we vote, we're grading the choices, or we're distributing the pennies between the options. And when we're in the face-to-face community meetings and we're trying to decide something, we're using sociocracy, which you've had a little bit of a sense for. But we go around the circle and everybody contributes to the proposal. What are we going to fund this month? We have $30,000, right? And you have a proposal and you have a proposal, and we try to see what the common denominator in the proposal is. And then we whittle it down, and we see what has the most support, and we work on it until we've got something by consent. We agree. We went through a process, a genuine process, that led us to backing this proposal. And that's how you overcome all the stuff that makes our democracy not work. And this stuff, for the most part, was worked out at the same time that the ideas of democracy and individual sovereignty were worked out.
Daniel?
You wouldn't believe it, would you? They're all French words. They're all, like, I can't, Condorcet, and there are a whole bunch of them, and I can't remember them right at the moment. But they worked out all this stuff, also about consent rather than voting. And, it went over everybody's head, or something. So, Thomas Jefferson, I'm just going to tell a very quick story. Thomas Jefferson wrote to quite a few people after his presidency, complaining about what a totally impossible situation he had been in as president, and all of the pressures that were on him. And he goes, I do not understand how we could have given 9 men in black robes the power to overrule the people. And then he says, I have no idea how we gave, and he gives, example after example after example. And he says, we got it all wrong. And he comes up with what he calls the ward republic. Everything starts in the community face-to-face meeting, town meeting, the ward. Not the town, not the city, the ward. 400 people, so 40 people can meet, and they select somebody who serves at their pleasure for as long as they think he's doing a good job to the next hire. So the neighborhood wards, and the neighborhood to the town to the city to the county to the state to the national. And no executive, no judicial, everything is done by the grand jury and the jury, the entire judicial system. And any proposal for a new law or for a project or whatever, because Jefferson was also really clear that they had been hung up by the law stuff, right? Because really what you want to do is build the infrastructure and make say he did the Louisiana Purchase. And he's bitter about it because of the pressure that he was under, and he's supporting Napoleon, who's, but it makes total sense. And so It all happens in the wrong way. So a proposal can originate at any level, at the national level, at the state level, at the county level, at the city level, at the neighborhood level, at the ward level. It has to go all the way up and all the way down. Be approved by everyone. And he says that'll stop us from, only the really good stuff that everybody agrees with will ever get through. And there are no 9 judges to overrule the will of the people. I mean, it's a rant. It's really wonderful. It's in Adrian Kaminsky's book, Fixing the System. So that's sort of what we're talking about, right? We're talking about it needs to be our judgment. It needs to be what we can hassle out in a reasoned argument with a time frame and a method of evaluating it, so that there are no unintended consequences. And if you ever wondered why they pass certain things, just look at the unintended consequences, and you know for absolute sure that's why. I'll give you an example. Why did the Rockefeller Foundation and all those big foundations fund the women's liberation movement?
That way
What's the unintended consequence? I'm not complaining about it because I think it's wonderful.
women can work.
Everybody is, say now, it takes 2 incomes to provide what 1 income did before. Thank Elizabeth Warren for working that out, the 2 income trap. But it's one of those things, if you're like me at least, and you start seeing this stuff, right, that's all you ever see. I just see the unintended consequence. It's totally clear to me why they did it. Why the Rockefellers funded that aspect. I think that there's a zeitgeist. That, there's a real time spirit. There's something that's moving in the consciousness that totally legitimizes the women's liberation movement. I mean, it's absolutely essential that we adopt a feminine perspective if we're going to live in harmony with nature and with each other. I mean, the women are the nurturers and the men are the warriors, and we are at war with everything, with nature, with each other, so we absolutely need to elevate the feminine principle. I don't want to be misunderstood. So what did the Rockefellers fund? They funded the women's liberation movement so that it would go in this way of unintended consequences. Women have to become more like men, right? You do not get to be a woman if you're going to make it in the marketplace. You have to prove that you can kick your kids to the side, It's just, okay. So the entire rCredit system is based on an agreement that we make with each other. And therefore, I'm spending a fair amount of time on it. And it starts with, I recognize that, and you all have it, so we can read along. I was going to put it up on the wall, but I'd much rather do it this way. I recognize that rCredits are intended, so I'm getting with the intention, as the basis for the common good economy, a democratic, community-centered economic system that puts people and planet first. That's pretty easy to agree with, isn't it? I would like to participate in creating a common good community that puts people and planet first. Right? That's the first sentence. I recognize that together as a community, we have the power to issue credit. Issue credit is highlighted. You can click on it. And it takes you to issue credit. Yes, it does. I have it. Oh, so electronic statements was the first one from the application. Bank account and electronic statements, that was that first one. On the next page that goes into the detail. So issue credit. rCredits are a type of credit. Like any medium of exchange, they represent value. They represent the value. They make it possible for us to trade goods and services with each other in our community without having to trade something directly with whoever has what we want, and without having to give them something of precisely the same value, barter. The medium of exchange lets us give any amount of our goods or services to any participant in the economy, then receive the same value of goods and services from some other participants. If everyone both buys and sells, the credits move through the community in interconnected circles of exchange. Issuing rCredits is a community responsibility. This is the key to creating a common good economy. We must issue as much credit as we need to enable our exchanges of goods and services, but no more than the value we as a community are capable of producing. I want to grow hemp, right? Are you capable? That's the question. Is it a good use of the resources? That's the question. So once we have the issuing power, the question is not where are you going to get the money? It is not. It's, are you capable? Is it a good thing to do? Do we want to see that happen? That's it. Because we are going to issue the credit that represents that capacity. If we issue too much and you fall on your face and nobody buys your hemp, okay, we issued too much money, we'll take a little bit out. But if it's successful, hey, we're off and running. We've just started the process of totally transforming our economy. And we're going to evaluate it and make sure that we're not suffering unintended consequences. Anyway, it's huge. It's not where are you going to get the money anymore. It's, is it a good thing? Full stop. Why? Because we understand that we can issue the representative of that productive capacity. And if you're not capable, right, and it doesn't pan out, it's not a big deal in the context of the whole system, and no big deal. Once our credits become well established and popular in a community, we can issue them together with careful planning as grants, zero-interest loans, and equity investments. Together we can fund whatever enterprises and activities we decide would be best for our community, for communities elsewhere, and for the world. In the meantime, until then, right, in the meantime and until then, our credits are issued automatically as a stand-in for US dollars, which are held unused in a separate account, in the escrow account, and as incentives for doing what will strengthen and grow the system. Sign-up bonuses, purchase rewards, you know, inflation adjustment, whatever we end up with. I mean, we've put a few things in place. So one of the first things I'm going to want this group to do when we're doing it is decide what the incentive should be. Because, you know, and we won't do that until the group is agreed that we're ready to do that. You know, we have enough businesses so that, etc. Okay, I'm going back to the agreement. That was an example of what the little blue, see, it's a one-page agreement. I love this way of dealing with that. It's a one-page agreement. Except that it has another 2 pages of small print.
Glossary.
Or big print, yeah, the glossary. That was one of the first things that happened, was we made the glossary. Before there was even rCredits, because we needed people to understand this stuff. So, I recognize that governance by the people is essential for a just society. And we just talked a little bit about that. So I'm going to read them without the stuff. I recognize that rCredits are intended as the basis for the common good economy, a democratic, community-centered economic system that puts people and planet first. Together, as a community, we have the power to issue credit for our own use as a medium of exchange. It is our promise to accept rCredits that gives them value. governance by the people is essential for a just society. So that's and the point is, you didn't have to agree with it. You just recognized it. There's a slight difference. It's actually significant. I recognize. I can see that, and we didn't ask you to endorse wholeheartedly, just to recognize that those things are true, right? So it's a slightly different consciousness that you're doing that. I can see this. This makes sense to me. Okay, now comes the details. B, as a responsible participant in the common good economy, as long as I can spend my rCredits easily or exchange them easily for US dollars, I will accept them without limit as payment for my goods and services. I will exchange rCredits for US dollars only if I cannot spend them easily. So you're agreeing that you'll prefer rCredits when you can, and that you won't cash them out unless you really need to, and we can call you on it. Or we can help you figure out how to do this. Or we can say, what do you need in order to do this? In order to maximize the use of the rCredit, we can go after those businesses. Or we can, we're now in a position to move everything, to make it all happen. There isn't anything standing in the way. We don't have to get permission from the legislature. I will accept rCredits from members of any common good community in good standing. Once my geographic area becomes a common good community, in the event of a cash crunch, I will back rCredits up to my average balance over the past 6 months. So, what we're getting into here is what it means to be a responsible participant. I am going to make sure that I'm participating in a way that demonstrates my responsibility towards the whole system within the reason of, in as much as I've been using it. So everybody cashes out, and now I've got all these incentives that people can't, that can't be cashed out, but because I have them and other people don't, and they need the cash, so I'm going to have to back it up to my average balance. Over the past, what did we end up with, 6 months? Yeah, we have big debates about how many months these things should be. But, so figure it out. I was using, $250 on average every month at the co-op, so that's what I got to come up with. In order to make sure that nobody is left in, nobody suffers if the system collapses. But that would, none of this would happen, and there are all kinds of other things that you can do. You can continue to accept them, you can continue to spend them until the whole process is wound down, and we can sit together and see what it is that we're going to do to solve the problem.
So we have a question.
Are you talking about a cash crunch or, a possible even dissolution of a community?
Dissolution of a community or cash crunch, it amounts to the same
Well,
thing.
they were worded kind of differently in the agreement.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
Right, well, we don't, once we've been going for about 6 months, we don't think it could ever wind down, that it would just collapse.
Well, but you still need to have your,
We do.
Guidelines. So are you talking right now about the cash crunch?
I was
or
talking about the
dissolution?
cash crunch. I will read it.
Is there,
Maybe somebody else should read it.
is there any other questions at this point? Sort of, Jamie, you feel good about it?
I have a question. How does that work outside of the rCredit community? Say you want to buy a house, and the community says that that's a good idea to buy a house for this one person or whatever.
Here, what's the scale yet? There comes a point where we buy a bank. Right? I'm going to be advocating that we never spend the escrow until it's big enough to buy a bank. Because as soon as we've bought a bank, what can we do?
You can function in the US dollar system as
We can create as much money as we can cycle through our bank. And we have the entire rCredits community understanding, at least in principle, that if they put their money in our bank, we can have an unlimited amount of, so we can fund absolutely everybody's mortgage if they're buying it from somebody who's going to put their money into our bank. And that's how we, into our common good bank. And that's how we totally overcome all the limits. And we're suddenly in a position to fund, because if we create the $250,000 for that seller, right, for you to buy it, and that seller agrees to put it in the bank because they understood the money thing, oh, I get it, right? I mean, if I, oh, okay, yeah, I'll do that.
But is that capital?
Pardon?
Is that capital?
Of the bank? No.
No.
It's the deposit ratio. The banking regulations, the reason that they get away with the intermediary and the idea that you're lending depositors money, right, is because of the ratio of deposits to liabilities. You remember, there have to be more deposits than liabilities in order for there to be capital. Do we want to do that now? No. We'll do that. I wasn't planning to bring that up right now. but if you ask the question,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So it totally depends on being able to understand what money is. And having a group that's big enough with enough people who understand so that you can actually affect people's behavior. And they say, yes, everybody can refinance their mortgage to 0 interest for the cost of administering it. Right? Because what does the bank have to earn? The bank has to earn enough to manage the whole thing. That's it.
So until that time, we're just operating within the community of people who are on the rCredit system?
Well, I think it'll take a while. I think there'll be a lot of rCredits communities all over before we're in a position to spend the escrow on buying a bank, which is somewhere around $10 to $20 million.
But a bank in any given town could serve other towns.
That's right. It just has to have a national charter. We've been through this. That's why we gave up on the Common Good Bank. We started out wanting the Common Good Bank. We raised $250,000 of the $10 million. And it's years on, and we're not making much progress. And we're going, nah, let's just do it. And why were we doing the bank? Because you can't explain mutual credit. Because nobody gets it. Okay, so, cash crunch. Would somebody like to read it?
I mean, where are we?
Cash crunch.
Cash crunch. Once your geographic area becomes a common good community, you can together decide to spend, grant, lend, and or invest some of the US dollars that members have put into their rCredits accounts that are sitting unused. Of course, you want to be careful not to use all of the US dollars. From time to time, members will want to exchange some of their rCredits for US dollars to pay companies and individuals not yet participating in the rCredit system. There need to be enough US dollars in reserve to cover the likely amount of those withdrawals. If you and your community misjudge and use too much of your US dollar reserve, you will have a cash crunch until more US dollars come in. There are many ways to handle this situation. For example, you might ask members who can to add funds to their rCredits account. Or you might get a short-term loan from a traditional bank or credit union. It will be up to you and your community to choose what to do.
When we come upon a statement that says there are many ways to do this, and you list one, and then another one that's absurd, it'd be good to have another footnote to say,
We can borrow from a bank.
that's focus.
No, it isn't. Not at all. We would represent it as the businesses. But we're a legal entity.
But what
we
I'm
can
saying
borrow.
is if there are many ways, there must be other alternatives than one.
Well,
Say, we could ask for somebody to donate it, or we could go get a loan. Well, that's not many ways.
Oh, right. I mean, but there are lots of things. We could say, okay, were you willing to wait the couple of months it'll take us to get your supplier? The reason you need to cash out is that we haven't been able to get the oil company on board, right? That particular oil company. And if we did, you'd have plenty of places to spend your rCredits. You'd be able to spend them and you wouldn't need to cash them out. So go with us to the oil company and let's do this. Let's get this done. There are lots of ways.
Yeah, well,
But,
so we
but
should
they
have them.
basically they amount to expanding the number of businesses that accept rCredits, right? And you know, tapping into people's
More
dollar
fluidity.
reserves, you know.
Yeah, fluid assets.
The more people that are in, the less
The less,
each will
yeah.
have to come up with.
Right. And William and I are very often at odds with the rest of the board because the rest of the board is so much more conservative than we are. We have about 68. I'll show you this after the break. We have about $68,000 in escrow, and William and I think we only need 30.